so excited to share with you Nicola Harvey, and she is going to, I think, really rock our world and giving us some tips on how to help our children emotionally and create a deeper connection when there are some outbursts and needs that we might need to address. So I'm really thrilled that she's here to speak with us today. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that this presentation is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Nicola Harvey, tapping into children's mental health and well-being. She is a professionally accredited and licensed tapping therapist based in England, UK. As a former school teacher with over 15 years experience, she is now a mental health and DEI consultant and a published author. Nicola continues to work with a range of schools and organizations to support the emotional health and well-being of children, parents, and educators. She takes great pleasure in seeing the difference tapping and other mindfulness activities can bring into people's lives. To normalize conversations around mental health, Nicola launched the Mindful Wellbeing podcast and has been featured in a range of media outlets, including Channel 4, a national television channel in England, where she shared the therapeutic benefits of tapping, or EFT, which she's going to talk to us about. So let's bring her on. Nicola, welcome to the Healthy Vibrant Kids Summit. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Hello, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
So when we spoke earlier about hopping on for an interview, you were such a beautiful person. I could tell that you were so passionate about helping others through this method. And so I am thrilled to be able to have you explain to us, because I don't think that a lot of people actually know about this tool for mental health and well-being. So before we do jump into that, though, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself and why you chose to specialize in mental health and tapping specifically?
The introduction you gave was fantastic. So I'm just going to add to that. So my name's Nicola Harvey. I am based in the UK, England, and I started out as a special educational needs teacher, or special ed teacher, or special needs teacher, as you may call it, in different parts of the world. So I mainly worked with children and young people that were on the autistic spectrum, that were neurodivergent, and had various other sort of differences or unique qualities to them. I found that a lot of the focus within education was on the academics and less so on the mental health and the social and emotional well-being. So within my training, that wasn't really a feature, but when I was in my classroom, I found myself gravitating towards mindfulness and, supporting the children's mental health with physical activities to help them and ground them. Often when therapists would come in, like speech and language therapists or OTs, I would often stick around when it was my non-contact time, just to have a nose at the different techniques that they were using with the kids. So and one of the things that we would use would be things like the zones of regulation to regulate children's emotions. I then looked a little bit further, and then on my journey, I looked into breathing activities and loved that, and yoga. Went on a journey with that and absolutely loved that, and became an author, writing books about children's mental health and well-being. Further down the line, I wanted to explore a little bit further after I'd left teaching and wanted to just look at different avenues. I was going into schools, delivering mental health workshops to children, to parents, to teachers. And along the way, I discovered tapping and just fell in love with it. Tapping is called Emotional Freedom Technique, and it's just a wonderful tool that can be very inclusive and supportive to help children and adults that are experiencing various difficulties, or even if you're having a great day. It's a really good way of just regulating the nervous system and supporting your emotional health and well-being. So my background started out in teaching. I love working with children and young people and supporting parents on their journey, particularly if they've had a very challenging time at home and they're trying to navigate through the system. So that is tapping. I can give you a little bit more details about EFT if you'd like me to.
I always forget I'm on mute. That's beautiful. I love that, and how it just shows you how much of a student you are. And I think that really runs deep for people who then continue on to help others. So thank you for sharing that story, because it was showing just how much that you were expanding your knowledge base to be able to help. And it's interesting that tapping is at the forefront of that in some ways. So if you can, because I think a lot of us are very unfamiliar with it. So let's just go into further talking about the EFT tapping.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So as I've mentioned, EFT is emotional freedom technique. And I'm very passionate about this because I think it's something that you can use from different perspectives, whether you are old, whether you are young, however you identify yourself. But I'm also very passionate about inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this is very supportive of different ethnicities and different backgrounds and faiths as well. So EFT itself is emotional freedom technique, and it was created, is based on Chinese traditional medicine. So if you are feeling poorly, or if you're feeling anxious, you may get sweaty palms, you may get a rumbly tummy or a fuzzy head. And these are signs that our body keeps score. Every emotion, everything that we go through in life, basically our body is almost like a temperature gauge and giving us signals with everything that we experience. So we have these physiological sensations constantly going at play. And often people, shut them down, or are disassociated or disconnected. When children are young, when we are younger, we tend to be more vocal. Like if we're happy, we're like, yay, or if we're sad, when a child is often, when the child is unhappy, because they'll have that rage and then they'll move on. As we get older, these emotions get stuck in our bodies because we are conditioned to just keep calm and carry on, as we do in a saying in the UK. So EFT itself is a lovely way that it's based on Chinese traditional medicine, and it was adapted by someone called Gary Craig. And what we do is we tap on the acupressure points in different parts of our bodies, and we say statements about how we're feeling in that present moment. And these different meridian parts, they're like energy centers. And often when we have emotions, heightened emotions like anxiety, stress, we may have experienced trauma, they get stuck in different parts of the body. And then if they do not flow, by tapping and verbalizing what's happening, they can get stuck and they can manifest into physical illness. So tapping itself is emotional freedom technique. It's freeing up those emotions, those stagnant emotions in the body, to help you feel lighter and help you just move through whatever is going on. It's clinically proven, so it's used by doctors, it's used by mental health professionals in various settings, because there's been a lot of studies to prove that tapping is effective for anxiety and various other conditions, including trauma. It's great to use with kids because kids, it's quite physical. So you can do some really fun activities with kids. And it's just a nice activity to do. So I would start when I'm tapping with a young person on what we call the karate chop, the side of the hand. And you tap and you start off with a setup statement. And then as you continue, you then go from the top of the head and you work your way down into these different areas, these defined areas. And you just basically verbalize how you're feeling. I think as human beings, we often have toxic positivity. So when someone says, "Oh, how are you doing?" You're like, "Oh, I'm fine. How are you? Have a great day." When really you may be struggling, you may be feeling, really upset, you might be stressed. And children, they will pick up on that, they will see that, and they will mirror that. So I think it's really important that adults are verbalizing their emotions, talking about how they feel in a open and inclusive way. If they're having a bad day, how about we just tap on it and see what comes up for us? So there are some things that come up when we tap. So you may tap and you might start to yawn, or you may see some tears, or you may feel tired. And these are great. This is your body basically releasing stagnant energy to say, actually, what's happening is good. So, we might be, but feel a little bit sleepy, but that's really good, because again, it's kind of just clearing that stagnant energy. So just to recap, emotional freedom technique is is abbreviated for EFT or tapping, and is a clinically proven scientific method of supporting children and adults and animals as well. You can do this on your pets, but then that'll probably be a different seminar altogether. You can do this on animals as well, but it's a lovely way because we all have these energetic lines. In yoga we call them chakras. In Chinese traditional medicine, they call them the meridian centers. We're all made up of energy. It's energetic medicine, but it's a way of supporting our emotional health and well-being, because as human beings, we have a range of emotions that are, we're navigating through on a daily basis. But in order to support children with their emotional health and well-being, tapping is a wonderful way of doing it. And as well, it can support fine motor skills and gross motor skills. So.
Wonderful. That you actually answered several other questions that I had, and so that was awesome. I just want to pull on a couple threads there, because I think this can be so powerful. Going back to your point of how we have that, I think you called it toxic positivity, where as adults we've just kind of gone into a rut where we suppress what's going on emotionally and mentally, and we put on a false front, if you will, like you said. And I know for myself, having a little 3-year-old who's very intuitive, she's like, "Mom, don't get stressed," as a 3-year-old. And I'm going, did I even say that I was stressed? And so they're just little sponges, and they actually, they can actually feel what's going on. And when you're putting on that front of I'm okay, they actually can feel and know that you're probably not. And so instead of kind of putting that front or that mask on, then this gives you a way to honestly help yourself as a mama or as a parent. And then you're training your kid to be able to understand and identify those emotions and be able to deal with them in a more positive way than suppressing them and then blocking those energies, which, like you said, they, correct me if I'm wrong, but just stagnation, whenever you have that blockage, that can lead to, like what you said, chronic illness and disease. So that all of that's so powerful, right? Because what do we want for ourselves, right? We want health and mental health. And I think we're just so stressed that I'm so thrilled that you're here, because I think this is not only for our kids, but also for moms as well, just to take a little time and do this on the daily. So can you talk about how this, you gave a thorough explanation. So how does this differ maybe from other mental health, emotional techniques? Can they be incorporated? I know you talked about breath work and stuff like that. Can this be a part of that, those techniques as well?
Yeah. So I really like that point. It's really one of my favorite sayings is it's okay to not be okay. And what we model and how we are around children basically is framing their subconscious minds and how they relate to themselves and how they support their mental health. So they're watching, they're observing, and they say what we do, not necessarily what we say, but what we do. So yeah, it's really key. One of the things that I love about tapping is that it can be used as a standalone method on its own. So you can tap and talk, and we can do some tapping rounds in a moment, but you can also combine it. So I deliver sort of tapping training, and I will have people on the course that are that have been practicing psychologists, and they work with clients on a day-to-day basis, and they want to add a tool, tapping, when they're doing their talk therapy, because I think it can be really helpful. There's also coaches that will use it on one-to-ones, but also teachers and parents, in the home environment, they may be using tapping just to support themselves. So in terms of it being a mental health intervention, it's something that can be used solely on its own, or it can also be used alongside something. It's dependent. It can, if someone has experienced high levels of trauma, they may want to see a tapping therapist a qualified accredited tapping therapist to support them and navigate through that. So it can be used alongside that. Within tapping, we often use breath work, because breath work is a great way to basically regulate the nervous system. When someone is anxious, they've got a shortness of the breath, and it can be quite overwhelming. But when they are quite calm and quite relaxed, we notice the difference. So sometimes things will come up in tapping, and we may have our toolbox and say, actually, let's do some breathing exercises, or let's move around for a little bit, let's shake the body. So it can be used as a standalone thing, but it can also be used, you can incorporate other things into tapping as well.
Wonderful. And I think that that's, just like you said, so great, because it can stand alone, or it can be combined with other techniques. So that is fabulous.
Yeah. The other
before maybe, oh
yeah, sorry. The thing that I completely forgot to talk about, I have a program called Breathe, Tap, Flow. And this basically incorporates tapping with other things. So, and you can see this on YouTube. If you can type in Nicola Harvey Breathe, Tap, Flow on YouTube, because I have videos of me working through the Breathe, Tap, Flow sequence. We start off, say for instance, anxiety. The breathing activity is humming. So we may do some humming, and just because humming is really good to regulate the nervous system, but also calm the mind of busy, anxiety, anxious thoughts. And then, so that's the breathing activity. And then we will do some tapping and say some phrases that, to bring up how we're feeling in that moment, and then we'll reframe them. And then after we've done the breathing, we'll move, we'll do something to do with some form of flow. So this could be just shaking it all out. This could be doing some lazy eights in the air. It's combining the three together. So it's wonderful to do with kids. So it's breath work, tapping, and some form of like grounding activity. It could be free, which is one of my favorites, where you think of 3 things that you can see, 3 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can touch or feel. And again, that is wonderful with children, because if you've just done the tapping, it will bring up emotions. Things may come up, and once we've cleared them, sometimes you're like, okay, what do I do now? So sometimes just having a bit of a shake off, or grounding that child into the here and now, can be wonderful.
that is awesome. So we'll definitely put that where they can find that on YouTube too.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not very good at remembering these things.
Okay. No, I
beforehand, but yeah, it's called Breathe, Tap, Flow, and it's a program that I've created. It's free, it's out there, and if anyone wants me to do anything bespoke, I'm more than happy to work with any parents or schools. So yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, I have a question. So if we're interested in this tapping, what would you recommend? Would you recommend, obviously maybe not doing it if our child is having a meltdown, or if they're experiencing anxiety, and maybe you can talk to some other specific instances that tapping would be specifically helpful for with children. But should we start doing this in a way that separates it from those I guess emotional events, so that then they're familiar with doing it before it's actually needed in that instant? Does that make sense?
Okay. Absolutely. So I suppose, as with anything really, it's best to do things with children and adults when we are regulated. If we introduce something to someone when they're dysregulated, they're bound to just be like, it's not going to work. So you could bring tapping into your everyday lives by doing some tapping in front of the mirror, or just saying, how are you today? And then just tapping, going, I feel great, I don't feel so great. It's normalizing these activities and bringing them into the day-to-day life, because then when a child is feeling overwhelmed or something has happened, it's like, Joel, should we try and do a tapping activity on that? It's not new, it's not the unfamiliar, it's something that they've already done, and something that they are more likely to do if they're feeling overwhelmed. So I would definitely bring in tapping into their day-to-day life to see how they get on with it. And then, when they are dysregulated or feeling overwhelmed, particularly for things like anxiety or bullying, or those social media or fears that they could be experiencing, it's great to do as we go along That way, when the worst does happen, at least they've got almost like a toolbox of self-regulation strategies that can help them, and tapping is a great way to do that.
Wonderful. I was thinking maybe about a good way to introduce it. Would you suggest maybe in the morning, especially as we're now going back to school, we're in school season again. What about starting the day, maybe brushing teeth and, like you said, doing it in front of the mirror and maybe doing some positive affirmations with them to kind of to introduce it? Is that a good way to maybe get started with that, with your introducing the tapping?
Yeah, lovely. I think that's a really good way. And I would probably introduce it to them prior to that, just to sort of say, this is what tapping is, this is how tapping works. And obviously it's making it really, child appropriate, age appropriate. And then perhaps finding out what their favorite spot is. Because when we tap, we have a sequence. When we do EFT, you have a sequence of tapping points that you're going to be tapping on. And some spots you'd be like, oh, this feels really nice. Oh, like that. And it may be like that. And with children, I often teach them, because with adults I add these additional ones with the end of the fingertips. But with children, sometimes they're doing this all together might be a bit much, but there might just be one activity that they like to do. So it could be that they're brushing their teeth in one hand. If you can do it's a bit like the that's the trick. It could be that they're brushing their teeth and then just tapping, or once they've brushed their teeth, take a breather, look at themselves in the mirror and tap in a certain area. So it's bringing it in. And, I think sometimes people think, oh my goodness, have I got to remember all these words? Have I got to do all of this? It can literally just be, a positive affirmation, something that they're feeling good about. But that in itself is just a quick, that's not full tapping. And I think we need to be really clear what the differentiation is, because I think on YouTube there's so much stuff out there, and I've gone to courses, I've gone to you go to these one day women's health things, and then the person's like, oh, I'm going to come up and do some tapping, and you're like, okay, that's great, but it's not really tapping. It's but fair play to you. So the full tapping itself is focusing on the negative, acknowledging it, and then reframe it so it clears. If we're with a young person and we want to bring tapping into their lives, and we want to prep them and get some, and it's in the morning, absolutely do some positive affirmations. It's a good way of, getting motivated and fired up and really sort of, energized, particularly if it's like, I'm a good kid, or I've so got this and everything's happening, everything's going to work out, I'm going to have a great day. They're really positive things and can help build self-esteem. They're looking at themselves in the mirror and they're tapping and they're saying those words. It's incredibly powerful. So that is a great way of sending a message to the brain and the nervous system that they're safe, they're here, and it's empowering. But if they're doing a proper tapping round, that in itself, will help them when they are dysregulated. So when they're doing a proper tapping round, they're like, should we try that tapping again? Tell me about how you're doing, how you're feeling. And then they're more likely to be receptive, and it will, the nervous system and the brain, the neural pathways will be aware of, oh, that's that tapping again. Okay, let's go, so yeah. Awesome. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I think maybe just for clarifying, because I'm not as familiar with it, but so when you're doing the actual technique, and this kind of ties it back to understanding your meridians, yes, you do tapping in a specific sequence so that it can clear out everything. Is that more of what, instead of just...
Yeah, so I do want to interrupt. Yes, no, when you're tapping on certain points. I didn't want to say too much at the beginning because I was thinking we could literally go through the different points.
Perfect.
Whereas if we're doing this in the morning, or we're trying to bring it into children's or adults' life, you can tap on a certain point that feels good and say some affirmations. That I think is lovely, but it's not the full tapping. So yeah.
Okay, so I think that was just what you were trying to say, is that those are powerful when you can, specifically tap on a point that feels good, especially for children. But then when you are doing the whole system, it is a set of different tapping points. So I think that leads us in. Would you like to demonstrate the specific tapping points for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll demonstrate the specific tapping points, and then maybe we could do a call and response in a moment as well. So first of all, we start off with the side of the hand, which is called the karate chop. So we start here and we say a setup statement, and the setup statement might be, even though I feel a bit anxious, I deeply and completely accept myself, or I'm a good kid and I'm here right now. So you tailor that phrase to the child that you're with. And then you go to the top of the head. You will see some people go here. They'll start in the inside of the eye. The way I've been taught is we go to the top of the head and then we just work our way down. So we go top of the head, crown of the head, and then inside of the eye, and then outsides of the eyes. And whilst we're tapping on these different points, these are meridian energy points that hold energy and emotions. Whilst we're tapping on these points, we will encourage the young person to say phrases like, I don't feel great, I'm really upset, this has bothered me. And what we're doing is we're acknowledging how they're feeling, and we're giving them that space to breathe, because often we don't validate our own feelings or talk. So we're tapping now just under the arm, yeah, and then we go to the wrist, yeah, and then we leave it there and come back to the top of the head. With some children, that might be too much, so just tapping on the fingertips. You know, sometimes in those movies you'll see like the bad guy plotting. There are energy points at the end of each of our fingers, which again can help us feel better. You know, sometimes in yoga we'll have mudras that we squeeze the ends of the fingers, and we also do things like we have reflexology, because there are energy points in our feet as well. So our fingers are very powerful. They hold a lot of energy. So just by doing that is helping with all of the tapping points. But sometimes it can be helpful to figure out which one works for that child. So we've got under the eye as well, under the nose, the chin point, and then here sort of like collarbone, that sort of area. And then, like I've said, under the elbow, under the sort of arm. And then sometimes it can be quite nice to just do the wrist area. There's lots of energy points in here. Or depending on the child, we skip the wrist and we come straight back. So it just be very, very dependent. But these are the energy, or these are the tapping points, the main tapping points that practitioners will use.
Beautiful. I love it. And it's so, yes, I was feeling, I was like, oh, that one felt good right there.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing, yeah. And sometimes there'll be tapping points that don't feel good. And I want to acknowledge that as well, because there'll be some tapping points that don't feel good. And that's okay. The thing is, it's okay to not be okay, and we're acknowledging that. And if something doesn't feel good, it means that there is an emotion or there's something going on. And what we can do is we can acknowledge it. We don't have to continue tapping on it, but just that acknowledgement is really good. You know, you can continue if you like, and then just figure out or continue talking or work with a practitioner to go a little bit deeper. And that's okay. It's just mainly that we're acknowledging that it's okay to not be okay, and what can we do to support ourselves in that. Like I said, I'm probably repeating myself. I'm finding that there's a lot of toxic positivity. Not everyone is fine 24 hours of the day. We're human beings. We're going to have stuff that comes up, as well as children. We're in a mental health crisis here in the UK, and pretty sure it's similar within the US as well, and different parts of the world. So one of the contributing factors is that people are often stuffing down their emotions and not being given space to actually say, I'm not okay, and using practical tools like tapping to support their well-being. Okay.
Beautifully said. Yes. And I think that this is a phenomenal tool to do just that. Is emotions are completely fine and to have, and being able to, instead of suppressing them, what better gift could we give our kiddos, you know, to be able to understand that we're human, meaning we have emotions, and it's okay to express them, and to especially talk about it with a parent and feel safe for that kid. But I think it's so powerful. as well with adults, like I'm getting some good stuff here with you today. So awesome. Would you want to go through maybe just what a little bit of a session would be like, or where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, let's do it. What example would you like to give? So maybe give an example that may have happened in your household or something that you've heard.
I'll just go this morning. My husband had a physical therapy appointment. It was going to be a crunch to get back here, and then it started to rain. So it was just a really stressful morning this morning. And so I was trying to settle myself down before the interview this morning. So could we maybe use a little bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I would also do is talk about picture tapping. So we'll talk about that afterwards, because before I forget, because that is wonderful to do with adults and children, because sometimes drawing a picture and then tapping on it can be amazing. But let's go for what you've just said. So you said your husband was preparing for a therapy session. And was it just look? How were you feeling about that therapy session?
I was feeling fine about it. Him probably not so much. It was just the time constraints getting from here to there, which I think is a common thing for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you say you were feeling a bit anxious about the timings because you had quite a lot going on that
Absolutely.
day? Yeah, yep. There we go. Okay. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how were you in terms of that anxiety?
I would say probably a 4.
4. So 10 being the highest and 4 being low.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that it's a 4.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Okay. And then some may have quite high stuff. So that's called the SUDS. So some people will have much higher SUDS if they're feeling really, really, really overwhelmed. So 4 is a number that we'll work with. And I'm going to come back to you and ask you how you're feeling about that afterwards. Okay. So it was anxious because of the timings, and you were unsure. Was your husband anxious as well?
No, I don't think so. No.
No. Okay. And you definitely want to use this example.
Is there a better one? Do you have one that maybe we could?
No, so because sometimes it can be quite good if we have an example of you feeling like really anxious or him feeling really, really anxious, and then we can just look at the differences. But if you want to use this one, sure, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, let's switch this, because he actually had surgery and he was anxious about surgery, and obviously I am the facilitator, and so I wanted, to help and make everything, much like every mama, right? But make everything better. And so that surgery day, we had to get up early and do all the things. So I would say stress and anxiety for that, just the unknown of surgery. I think we would both have been, 8, 9, 10 on those days, on that specific day. That's probably a better one.
Yeah, okay, no worries. So we are doing this literally on the spot, so it's kind of like, don't worry. So we're going to start with the karate chop, and I'm going to tap, and I'm going to ask you to repeat back after me. So I'm going to pause at certain points, and you repeat my words. And yeah, let's just see. So that was kind of anxious about your husband going into surgery. Yeah. So what's your husband's name? Would you mind saying? Or
sure, it's Matt.
Matt. Okay. Even though, and then you repeat back.
Okay. Even though
I felt anxious.
I felt anxious
about Matt going into surgery. I deeply and completely accept myself right now.
I deeply and completely accept myself right now.
And even though I had these feelings,
and even though I had these feelings
and these sensations
in my body,
I deeply and completely honor how I feel right now. And where did you feel those sensations?
Right now it was in my hand where I'm tapping.
Okay. Yeah. So when you were experiencing those anxiety, so you're feeling it in your hand right now, but when we're thinking about that event, you're feeling
The
anxious
day.
about the day.
Yes, in my
Okay.
heart. Yeah, my
In your
chest
heart.
area.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So even
though
I had those feelings in my chest and my heart area,
I had those feelings in my heart and chest area,
I'm willing to honor how I feel right now.
I'm willing to honor how I feel right now.
Top of the head. All these feelings,
All these feelings,
I felt them in my heart and my chest area.
I felt them in my heart and my chest area.
And I'm just going to honor that.
I am going to honor that.
I'm just going to honor that.
I am just going to honor that.
These feelings that I felt about Matt going into surgery.
These feelings that I felt about Matt going into surgery
Was uncomfortable.
Was uncomfortable.
And it didn't feel great.
And it did not feel great.
But I'm just going to honor that.
But I'm just going to honor that.
I'm here right now.
I'm here right now.
And maybe there was a part of me.
And maybe there was a part of me
that was picking up on Matt's feelings.
That was picking up on Matt's feelings.
And maybe as his wife.
And maybe as his wife.
I was just worried about how he would get on.
I was just worried about how he would get on.
Top of the head again. And those feelings were quite intense.
And those feelings were quite intense.
I'm just going to honor that.
I'm just going to honor that.
He was going to have surgery.
He was going to have surgery.
And we were both worried.
And we were both worried.
And that's natural.
And that's natural.
We all get worried from time to time.
We all get worried from time to time.
But Matt was going into surgery.
But Matt was going into surgery.
And I felt it in my chest.
And I felt it in my chest.
Did you feel it anywhere else?
No, it was really just a chest and a heart thing.
I felt it in my chest and my heart.
Felt it in my chest and my heart.
Yeah. And was anything else happening at that time?
Maybe shortness of breath a little bit, probably.
Yeah. And my breathing was constricted.
And my breathing was constricted.
There was a shortness of breath.
There was a shortness of breath.
Okay. I just want you to place your hands on your chest and just take a couple of nourishing breaths. In and out. How are you feeling right now? You just...
Good.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Whilst we were tapping, did anything else come up? Any other thoughts?
No, I was just really focused on that feeling in the moment.
Yeah.
And it felt good to release it, actually, because I don't think I had.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just do one more round to bring that together, because normally this would be a few rounds and we'd go a bit deeper. And then before we move on, how are you in the SUDS now? How are you? Is it still very high, that number? What number would you give that now when you think about the surgery?
I would say it's the 4 now.
Oh, it's gone down. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you're feeling that's great. That is great. And for people that are watching this, sometimes it doesn't drop as much, and it's brilliant. It's fantastic. Sometimes it will drop and then you'll tap. But when the fact that it's gone down so much is wonderful. Is the sensation still in your chest and your heart area, or has it eased when you think back about it?
It's actually eased. There's not as much here, not as much tension or heaviness.
Okay, that's good. And again, that is wonderful. Sometimes these sensations will move. So sometimes it will move from the chest and the heart if it's there, and that's if this is, someone's watching this and they're having these sensations, and it may move to a different part. Whatever's happening, it's okay. It's wonderful that it's eased, and that's okay. Someone else might be tapping along, they might have these sensations that are moving. So it's just acknowledging that, and it's brilliant in that sense. So let's just tap just one more time on the side of the hand. And again, we're doing this for demonstration purposes. So even though I feel a lot better now,
I feel a lot better now.
I'm here right now.
I am here right now.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
And even though I've never done tapping before,
I've never done tapping before,
I'm willing to honor how I feel right now.
I'm willing to honor how I feel right now.
And even though the surgery was huge back then, all is well and I am safe.
All is well and I am safe.
And my husband is going to be okay.
And my husband is going to be okay.
Top of the head. It feels good to release this.
It feels good to release this.
And put this out into the open side of the eyes.
And put this out into the open.
I feel good to be here right now.
I feel good to be here right now.
And Matt has had his surgery.
And
he is going to follow up appointments now.
He's
on the road to recovery.
He is on the road to recovery.
And all is well.
And all is well.
The days are going to be different.
The days are going to be different.
And my emotions will be up and down. Time will not always be on my side.
Time will not always be on my side.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
I'm okay.
I am okay.
I'm here right now.
I am here right now.
And how do you want to feel?
You're asking me how I want to feel?
Yeah, tell us how you want to feel. How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling a lot more peaceful and calm.
Side of the eyes.
And maybe even a little bit energized.
Energized, wonderful. So I'm feeling peaceful.
I'm feeling peaceful.
I'm feeling calm.
I am feeling calm.
And I'm here right now.
And I'm here right now.
I've so got this.
I've still got this.
I've so got this. Probably more of an English saying.
And I've got this.
I've got this. And this is basically just like an affirmative to fire you up a little bit. It's okay to not be okay.
It's okay to not be okay.
Okay. And then just place your hands on your chest. Lovely. And again, just take a moment to breathe and notice how you're doing. Lovely. Wonderful.
Really great.
How are we doing? So I'm so pleased. So how are the suds now? So you were originally quite high. It was a 9 or and then you got to a 4. How are you feeling now?
I would say that there's really no stress or anxiety around the surgery, or, I mean, even this morning, I talked about having the stress of going to the appointments, and it's okay. It's okay now.
Yeah, okay, that's amazing. So wonderful. Thank you for suggesting this. So tapping itself is very, very quick and can, not in all cases, people are all different. And sometimes when we tap, we will discover different aspects, we'll discover other things, other memories may come up from childhood. If this is an adult, that will be, triggering what's currently happening. When we were tapping, the advice or the guidance is to tap for at least 7 taps. I like to tap for more, but if you are tapping, then you can just make sure that you tap for at least 7 whilst you're saying these statements. And as we were doing the activities, we was tapping. We started off on the things that were not so great. We were acknowledging them. We weren't dismissing them. We were almost validating them and bringing them out into the open, and then reframing them. And sometimes, I mean, obviously, for the purposes of this, we've done it quite quickly, but sometimes we do a few rounds and dig deeper and just see if there's any underlying things that are connected to hospitals, appointments, and things. But if we go back, so this is more so for the adults. If we go back to the children, we would modify this to say, for instance, a child is anxious about going to school or they're being bullied. We'd maybe, depending on their age, we'd maybe start with the karate chop and say, even now I feel worried about going to school. I'm here right now and I'm a good kid. I've got this. We're trying to just make it, because obviously they're children and we want to really make it simple and specific for them. And then we would just acknowledge, or we'd do tap and talk and say, so how are you doing? And they'd say, oh, I'm really worried about what's going on at school, or I feel really upset and I feel fearful. This doesn't feel good. And we get them to go around and we just, again, acknowledge that it's okay to not be okay. And then, how would you like to feel? Again, asking them where they feel it in their bodies and going back to say, do you still feel that there? And, so there's really good ways of doing this. So I would advise working with a practitioner if there's something quite underlying and quite deep, but tapping on the different points and acknowledging how you're feeling is amazing, because as we've just demonstrated with you, it can help shift things. Sometimes there's more stuff to do, but it can be a really good, effective tool. And even if, like we said at the beginning here, just tapping on certain points and just talking positively to ourselves can be great for our self-esteem and confidence, as long as we're not using that to cover up underlying issues, because as we know, what we resist persists. Things will come back, so it's really important that we're acknowledging that.
Beautiful. And I think this was super helpful for me, because like you said, you can tap this into Google, you can tap this into YouTube, and you might, just from going through the experience with you here and the training, correct training I would even offer, is completely different from some of the things that I have seen just being online. And so I also like the fact that, thank you for working with me, because I think and you did a good contrast there with what that is for a parent, which I think this this is so great, because I think parents are at that stress point, and this is definitely a way to just acknowledge it and work through it and not suppress it. I think that's the biggest thing. But then also being able to use it for yourself and your kid. Oh my goodness, this is just fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and a couple of other things. Just the other thing was, like I mentioned, like with a lot of the stuff we were talking about, for some children, particularly if they're neurodivergent and it's just a bit too much, they might just want to tap on the end of the fingertips, or just sort of like on one spot that they find is quite effective. We don't always have to talk. If someone is nonverbal, you can just tap on the points and breathe. You mentioned earlier about having shortness of breath when you first went to the hospital. We're thinking about the hospital appointments. Just mindfully noticing how you're breathing whilst you're tapping would be really helpful. with children as well, a lovely activity to do is picture tapping. And that is where, they're upset about something, sometimes just being creative, because they're still in that creative place, in that creative state. Drawing or any form of creativity with kids can be incredible. So getting them to draw a picture of the situation that is making them unhappy or making them feel poorly, getting them to draw that as much detail or as little detail. They might just want to squiggle all over and just make a mess, and that's fine. And then tapping on what they can see. That in itself is just communicating with the subconscious mind that has drawn that picture. And you then say to them, what can you see? What can you see? He says, oh, I can see myself in the picture. I'm crying, or the colours are yellow and blue. And, getting them to describe what they can see and getting them to talk it through can be incredibly beneficial. And that is just a really simple thing where you don't have to do the negative and then the positive, or negative and then reframing. You can literally get them to draw a picture and tap on what they can see. And that is incredibly powerful, because you'll find that after a while, once they've been tapping and tapping and tapping, the intensity of the emotions will fade in most cases, not all cases, but they'll look at the picture and be like, actually, it doesn't bother me as much anymore. So yeah, it's worth trying. Do give it a go, and I'd love to hear any feedback from any parents that try that.
Oh, that's wonderful. This has been so enlightening, better than I hoped that it was going to be. So thank you for your awesome presentation and your thorough explanations of what tapping is. And I think that it can be a super powerful tool for mental health and well-being for parents and children together. And then what an awesome opportunity to have that connection together between parents and their children. So thank you so much for sharing today. Can you tell us where we can go to find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Nicola Harvey. So you can find me on LinkedIn as Nicola Harvey. My website is harveyhills.com/tapping, where I am doing one-to-ones and group tapping sessions online and in person if you're in the UK in Brighton. But I'm also delivering tapping training. So yeah, if you are ever interested in training and learning how to do this professionally, whether you are doing this with your friends and family, or you're already a practitioner intrigued on ways to bring in professional tapping and become an accredited trainer, you can contact me via my website. Alongside that, I'm a published author and I have a couple of books. We've got Mindful Little Yogis, Self-Regulation Tools to Help Children Breathe and Relax. That's a lovely activity book, and it's got lots and lots of self-regulation strategies, mostly around breathing, mostly around deep breathing and ways to different breathing techniques, particularly if the child is neurodivergent. So this is a lovely activity. This is mostly for parents and teachers, but it has lots of different activities that you can bring into the classroom or the home. And then this book is for children. So this has got very, very diverse characters, and this is for children to actually use and work through different activities, colouring in, looking at their feelings and their thoughts to support their emotional health and well-being. So again, this is both books you can get online, or you can just send me an email. This is available in most bookshops, and this is available on Amazon. And this is also Amazon as well. But yeah, so it's Nicola Harvey. And yeah, any questions about what I've covered today, please do get in touch. And I'm also on Instagram as Harvey Hills. And my podcast is the Mindful Wellbeing Podcast, which is launched on Spotify and available on most other platforms, where I'm talking about mental health and emotional well-being with some incredible guests. But any questions, please do reach out. I would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Nicola. I appreciate it. And I know you're going to hear from our audience and our viewers for sure, because this has been super helpful. So thank you. You're amazing. And thank you for being willing to share with us today. For everyone else, I hope everyone has a happy and vibrant day.